Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad to have you for our session on team dynamics. I'm going to just share something in the chat. Actually, I think it has posted. I found a really neat blog today about 22 Earth Day activities you can do with your team. So check it out. You may want to keep a notepad handy electronic because we're going to be sharing quite a few links today in the webinar in the chat, so you can always cut and paste those into a notepad. So just a little tip there before we get started. So thank you so much for joining today. I see some familiar names of folks who have joined us in the past for these Takeaway Tuesday webinars, and then I see some new names, which is great. And I received a lot of questions, so I am going to weave those questions into the presentation. And then I'm also happy to take questions as we go. So you can use the chat for that. So again, welcome. Team Dynamics, leveraging the unique traits to get the most from your team. And 6 of you asked, how do you identify those traits? And we're definitely going to be talking about that. So the theme today is all around Earth Day, and Earth Day is April 22nd. The theme this year is invest in our planet. And as we were thinking about Earth Day and April and coming up with our theme for the month, we really felt like there was a connection here to team dynamics, because leading a team every day is really like trying to get a garden to grow or trees to thrive. You need a solid foundation. You need constant care and nurturing. Everything needs to work together and needs space to grow. So we just felt this topic wove in so nicely with Earth Day. So we're taking some liberties with our theme today to integrate that. We also have been writing all month about team dynamics. So check out our Monday blogs. We post every Monday a new blog, and this month is all dedicated to team dynamics. And I need to say thank you to my team, because much of this presentation is a summary of the elements that have gone into those blogs. So the topics today are the benefits first of building teams with unique traits. What are the power of teams, and why do we want the people on them to be different and unique? And then the power of identifying those traits. So you identify what the uniqueness is and can further leverage it, which again, one of you said, how do I leverage unique traits? And then strategies for helping your teams navigate and thrive in a challenging team environment. So we're going to talk a lot about team dynamics, conflict, what happens, what do you do about it, and the role of the leader, and what the leader needs to do to help fuel and grow the team to be a thriving one. If you are new to Omnia and these Takeaway Tuesdays, I just want to do a little bit of an overview just for context purposes. We were established in 1985. Primarily, we offer scientifically validated workforce assessments. Our customers use those for hiring, selection decisions, and development and retention and engagement of talent. And today we're going to be talking a lot about the engagement of talent, specifically with teams, and you can use those assessments for that. We have over 200 industry-specific benchmarks. So for hiring, you can look at our benchmarks, or we can also customize one for yourself. And then we have lots of tools and resources to help our clients. We have over 2,000 clients across the world. We have live support every single day. I'm supported on this presentation by Tanya Devane, who's one of our customer success team members and the leader of the team. And they're always there to help you. So we believe in taking care of our customers and making sure you get the most out of Omnia and that it works for you. So if you don't know that team yet, I hope you'll take a chance to chat with them. So a little bit about me. I joined Omnia 2 years ago, February of 2020. Lucky me, right before the pandemic. I am the Chief Revenue Officer, and I have over 25 years in sales and sales leadership. And at Omnia, I'm responsible for the entire client lifecycle, marketing, sales, and our customer success team. And this is a picture of me on my dad's horse on his farm. And when I think about Earth Day, I just think about that. I love to hike. I love the outdoors, and I just appreciate the beauty of this planet. So usually I put a professional photo up, but I thought, I think I'll share the picture of me with Toby on that wonderful day in his backyard. And when I think of Earth Day, I always think of things thriving, just being beautiful and green. And this image was from a conference that I presented at earlier this year. And I just loved it and it spoke to me. And I'm like, this is our Earth when it's all good and green and thriving. But I have to tell you the truth. When it comes to a green thumb, I don't have one at all. On the left is a plant that's been in my house now for over 5 years. And I prided myself that at least it had some leaves on it that were still alive. I water it every Monday, but that's the best it's ever looked, with the exception of when it was given to me. And then this is a picture of our backyard I took last week because we have this patch of grass that we just can't get to grow. We've tried everything. I think we're going to just settle and move to pavers or something because it just won't thrive. And then there's a little planter there that you can see of another struggling plant. Every spring I plant new plants and then I forget to water them and I end up with empty planters or planters that have straggling leaves. So I just had to come up with that truth. But when it comes to teams, I do have a lot of experience and I have some scars to prove it. And I'll share some of those stories today. So I feel like I can talk to you about team dynamics and use the analogy, even though I don't have the green thumb and the planting techniques. So if when you think about teams, they can be a challenge. Working with two or more people, you're always going to have differences of opinions, different traits, and it can be a challenge. So I thought we should first talk about why teams and the benefit. And this came straight from a SHRM study on high-performing teams and the benefits of them. And then there are some great tips and tricks in that SHRM study. So if anyone wants that, let us know as well. But the key is teams can execute more quickly. They can get a lot more done than one person on their own. They make better decisions because people come at a problem from different perspectives, different experience, different ways of making decisions. So when you've got a team working on that, yes, it can weigh you down a bit with time, but you're likely to make a better decision when you involve the team. Same goes for complex problems. The power of a team in solving complex problems. I think we all think of NASA and the race to get on the moon and the things that we see happening in our world all the time. It takes teams coming together and working together to solve really big problems. It also can do a lot to enhance creativity and build skills, more than an individual can do on their own. So when you're working with others and you can learn from others and see the benefit of the way they approach it, you can incorporate that and really get a lot more creativity out of your team. And just as in a nutshell, teams outperform individuals and any other type of working group. So I think that's a good definition to think about because anybody can be a working group. You can have your sales function, your customer service function, your accounting function. Those in a sense are working groups, but are they functioning as a team? Think about that. Are they working together and solving problems and addressing things together? That's what makes it a real team. And that's what we're going to focus on is, how you can do that for your groups. So high-performing team members have some clear things in common. First and foremost, there's trust. There's got to be trust among the team. When someone's sharing an idea, they have to trust that the team isn't going to laugh at them or mock it or do something passively aggressive to just disagree with it. So there's got to be a level of trust. High-performing teams have to have a team mentality. One of you commented about a sales team and that the sales team is working in silos. And that's a clear indicator when you see that if they're not considering the other people in the team and the impact of their actions or requests for support, over a weekend or after working hours or tight deadlines and not being clear, way in advance when you need something, that's not going to help the team. So you have to have a team mentality and be thinking about each other. High-performing teams are diverse in thought, diverse in background. As much diversity as you can have, the better it's going to be. I like to say, if all of us always agree, then, most of us aren't necessary. You want people on the team that don't agree with everything, that bring new ideas, new thinking, and have those different backgrounds and varied experiences. varied ethnicities, all of it just brings to the richness of a team. Clear direction is key. You can't just have a team for team's sake. There's usually a common mission, a common objective, shared values, and the leader at the helm needs to make sure that the direction is set. And then there has to be space for healthy conflict, and we'll talk about that. The best teams do have conflict. There is going to be difference of opinion, and you've got to create space for having that. There has to be celebration, celebrating wins, and not just waiting till the end, but celebrating milestones and progress, and then making feedback a cornerstone of the team's culture. Most of the issues with your team are probably coming up between team members, where there may be a lack of respect, there may be someone not pulling their weight, people are disappointing each other. You've got to make sure that people know how to give feedback to each other and address the situation with each other, versus what I like to say, doing the up and over, going to the boss, and the boss goes down and it's he said, she said about it. So you got to make sure your team knows how to do that. But it's really hard. It's really, really hard to get this to happen. And here's one of the reasons why. I'm going to show you a visual and ask, what do you see? And if you could put in the chat, what's the first thing you see in this visual? A lioness, two animals. Cynthia, what animals do you see? So the monkey and a lion with the tree between them. Birds. Did you have to look at this a little bit differently to see it? Did anyone not see the lion and the gorilla at first and only saw the tree, and then your eyes feel like they're playing tricks with you before you zoom in? If someone sees fish, oh yes, the fish are at the base of the tree. Good detail. So if you've seen something like this before, you know how to look at it. And these kinds of puzzles have been around forever. So I think we've got some experience folks on here. But sometimes you do have to look a little closer and see what really is the picture telling you. And what happens is our perspective will really make us struggle with this in cases where we're not looking at something from a 30,000 foot level, zooming out and taking in the whole picture. We may be just looking at aspects. And we do that because of our attitudes, our motives, different interests, personal agendas, different experiences, different expectations of what you want to see, and then, of course, personality traits. So all of those things can impact our perspective, not just the picture itself and the way we're looking at the picture, but we're always looking at things with a filter. We're human beings. We all have our own filters that we have to keep in check. And all of these elements here on the chart are what impacts those filters. So let's talk about team development. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this study. It's been around a long time. 1965, Bruce Tuckman completed this research, and he dedicated his career to American psychology research. And he developed the 4 stages of team development, and they're forming, storming, norming, and performing. And no team gets off free from going through these. Like I said, I've managed a lot of teams in my career, and I see these stages all the time. And even a bummer is you re-go through them, or you hit different stages depending on where you are when new members join, or objectives change, or you merge or buy a company. You are going to have to go through this process again. It's like you can't avoid any of the phases. So let's talk about the phases and what you can do to help get your team through them. So the first thing when you're forming a team is that's when the team's first coming together to work on it, or you've got new members on the team. You go back to forming. In this case, what happens is people are just getting to know each other. They're getting to know the space, what the culture is like, how much they should say or maybe not say. So you're going to get a lot of politeness. You should be getting a lot of questions from people, and you should be asking questions. There are issues of not feeling part of the group yet, usually, or people may be threatened because there is a new person and maybe their territory is going to get impacted. So you've got inclusion issues from everybody, whether it's existing team members or new team members. And immediately, obviously, this can really lower productivity. not just from a learning perspective, but truly from a team dynamics perspective, because people just aren't familiar with how to work. So the key is set ground rules when people join. Have some things that you do every single time someone joins to introduce them to the group, sending a background about them, making sure they have space and time on your team calls and in your team meetings. Take time to do some proactive team building. It's really hard, especially when new people join and everybody knows each other so well already, and they're telling stories, or they've got all this history and the new person doesn't. So it's a great opportunity to do some new team building to give a chance for people to get to know each other again. And make sure you as the leader are fostering that open and honest communication and laying the groundwork for it. The next phase is storming. And again, it's going to happen. It happens on every single team, particularly in the early stages of coming together. There's always competition, and we'll talk about that when it comes to personalities, but competition is going to be there. People are going to feel competitive or protective of their territory, their turf. There is going to be conflict because there'll be difference of opinion about how things should get done, or how quickly they should get done, or what the priorities are. And you're going to have issues of autonomy and control. You've got some people on your team who want to work more independently and don't really think the team needs to even know too much about what they're doing. They want to make their own decisions. And then you've got people with high control needs that want everything talked about and detailed and shared, and want structure in their work. So that's why you get the conflict. As a leader, one of the best things you can do in this case is really stand back. And like I said, have feedback involved, have people work on getting to know each other. You've got to address it one-on-one when you see team conflict happening, but encourage the peers addressing it to each other. And then you've got to reassess and make sure that everybody on your team has the skills and the capabilities to work through this phase. And if not, then you're going to have to make some more significant changes. So that's your role as the leader, to constantly reassess and make sure you get through it. I loved one of the questions that was written is, can you turn drama into good? And I chuckled because, like we said, when 2 or more people are gathered, there's bound to be some drama. And this is what that storming phase is. But if you can come out the other side of it, you can actually get a team that will laugh about this conflict in the end, and it becomes part of their history and story. But it does take hard work. You can't just sweep it under the rug. I took over a high-performing sales team. I'll never forget, in 2005, the year just still sticks out to me, a very high-performing sales team, and the people on the team couldn't stand each other. And so in my first few meetings, one-on-one with people, all they were focused on was, well, are you going to make her do that? Or are you going to do something about so-and-so? And are you going to fix him? And it was all finger pointing. And at one point I was with an individual, and I just met with her personally at Starbucks because she was just putting roadblocks in front of anything I was trying to do on the team. And she and I literally had a complete blow up. And it wasn't one of my finer moments as a leader, but it was almost like, how splashing cold water. When I did it, I was like, I need you to worry more about yourself and not everybody else. Because at the end of the day, you're a salesperson and you need to drive your results. And I will get everybody else on the team aligned. We still laugh about that infamous Starbucks visit today. We're like, and sometimes when she's a good friend of mine now, we don't work together anymore, but sometimes we're like, oh, do we need to go to Starbucks? So it's something that you can joke about if you've dealt with it and gotten through it. I think you can turn drama in, and you can learn from drama, because when feelings get hurt or expectations don't get met, and you can communicate about that and bring it out, you will make the team better for doing so. So conflict usually does provide a healthy movement forward. And then you can start norming. So in the stages of norming, you're definitely getting increased cohesion and emerging trust, and people are appreciating differences. What can happen, though, is you could start seeing cliques. So be careful of that. You think, oh, everybody on the team's getting along, and yet maybe you've got just a few who are really getting along and still not involving everybody. So be careful when this phase hits. What you can do is definitely listen, make sure you're watching for those signs, encouraging ongoing communication and growth of the team, celebrate it, reward it when people help each other, and then obviously facilitating norming moving to performing. So on the team that I talked about, one of the very first things I did was a personality team assessment for the group. And this was before I knew Omnia. I've just always been a believer in assessments. And that was such a beneficial thing to do and eye-opening, because it was the first time the team realized that not everybody approaches the world the same way. They don't think through things the same way. And it really was a benefit to just creating that awareness of self and of others. And so then we finally get to performing. And in performing, you have everything you would think: harmony, productivity, creative problem solving, because people are trusting and they'll bring issues to the team to address. And at this point, it should be smooth sailing for you as the leader to continually coach and develop and trust the team to do the work. But there's always this level of reassessment needed, especially in the time that we're living in right now, where it seems like so many have reevaluated what they want to be doing with their life and not necessarily feeling comfortable in team situations. And you may find people are more stressed than normal or reacting more extremely than possible. So constantly assessing where your team is really important as the leader. And I will share something that does happen, because I just keeping it real. I once was on a team that was a team that came together to get a huge contract. And we worked together from getting pursuing the opportunity to contracting it to implementation. And our team never got through the storming phase. And unfortunately, the team just never all agreed and aligned on the mission and the work. And some didn't want to pursue the business at all. So we ended up getting the contract, but we still had a lot of disgruntlement on the team, even during the contract, and we performed and we implemented the work. But it just was a real shame that we never were able to get through these phases. And it was just because of that disagreement up front. So I share that because it can happen. You can get to the point where you can't get the team to move on. Thankfully, in my situation, that was a one and done. We weren't going to stay together as a team. And I learned a lot about how to pick teams in the next phase and how to make sure you get that alignment. Because you have to work through those phases. And if you can't work through storming, you're never going to get to performing fully. You're always going to have your clicks. You're going to have you could potentially have people undermining and all those things. So it can happen. It's not always rosy, but using these traits and tips definitely help. And knowing when to intervene as a leader is key. So where are you? We're going to do a quick poll. Hopefully you can see that over in the polls. If you go over to the right bottom of your screen, you should have an icon for polls. And if you click on that, you can submit your vote of where you are. And it doesn't look like it's working. I'm not seeing any votes come through, so we might have a snag with our poll. So let's do this instead. If you could put in the chat, A for forming, B for storming, C for norming, D for performing, and we'll do it that way. And I'm going to quickly try to scan these while we go. Let me just check this again and make sure. Nope, it's not working. All right. So I saw a lot of C's. I see an A. We got some new teams forming. B, we got some storming, looks like. Trisha, Robin. So mostly A, B, and C. I don't see any D yet. So I guess that's why you signed up for the webinar. It makes perfect sense. So hopefully this will be helpful to think about your team, but just knowing where they are. And I would suggest putting this out to your team. We've got, you got this tool. Somebody asked if you'll get the deck, and you will get the deck and the recording. So put it out there. Just say, this is where I think the team is, or maybe ask them where they think they are, and use the team to consider, how can we get through these phases, particularly for storming? How can we move forward? We have to move forward to get to the next level. Somebody asked about conflict resolution too, and Tanya will put in the chat. We have a webinar that we've done on addressing conflict. And for those of you who are clients, if you have a subscription with us, you also get free webinars where we'll come and present to your team. So there's an on-demand webinar you could watch, or we could do one for your team if you're having some issues and you want to develop your team's ability to address conflict. So we're here to help. in whatever way would be most helpful. And there is the link in the chat, creating a unified team with conflict resolution. So let's talk about how you move in, coaching and engagement strategies. And what you want to understand in your team is, what are their motivators? What level of assertiveness do individuals have? Because they're all different. What's the communication style of the individuals on the team? What's their preferred pace of work? What's their need for structure and level of detail? And how do they like to be recognized? If you can put your finger on these things in your team and you lead them in a varied way, you don't treat everybody the same, you lead them based on these preferences, you will go a long way in having your team become a high-performing team. And you'll go even further if the individuals on the team share this information with you, with each other. And the great news about Omnia is that's what we do. So we have a way for you to do this. And through our assessment, we have 17 different personality types. And of course, I'm not going to get into all these today, but we have been doing some work around categorizing these types. And I'm going to show you that today in a different way. We'll talk about these different traits as they relate to your team. And there are 4 different categories of your teammates that are your team members that you're going to see. And they really break down into 2, supporters and drivers. There are supporters on the team and there are drivers on the team. And what makes the difference is their level of assertiveness primarily, and also some other elements. There's some nuances in each of these. But the drivers have a high level of assertiveness. The supporters are more team-oriented. It's not possible for a highly driven person, someone who scores almost the highest on our assessment on level of assertiveness, it's almost impossible for them to think about anyone else but themselves first. They're very, very me-driven when they're that extreme. Same goes for someone who's a supporter and they're extreme. They can't think of anything else but we. So therein can lie in some of the conflict, right? If you've got me thinkers and we thinkers, the we's sometimes get their feelings hurt because they're left out, they're not communicated with, and the me's just want to get everything done at the pace that they want to get it done and get frustrated and aren't necessarily patient with that. So let's just break this down a little bit further. When you think about the supporters, there's 2 different types of supporters, social and analytical. And again, the supporters are we-driven. So the first thing you're going to see with a social supporter is being very receptive to ideas, people on the team, unstructured in nature. So they're okay to fly by the seat of their pants, to have things thrown at them. They love talking and sharing personal connection. So these are the people on your remote team meetings that are going to want that time, the icebreaker, the chit chat. They're going to want to be called and have one-on-one conversations still on the phone or in Zoom or in Teams. They love talking and having personal connection. And they also are natural enthusiasts. So can you think of some people on your team that fit this mold? And then what happens when you get the flip side of it? So let's look over at analytical supporters. They're not as social. It just says it right there in the title. The analytical supporters are very supportive and we-driven, but they prefer to work in more fact, data. They'll think before they talk. They won't necessarily come out on the call with their immediate idea or thought. They need to process it. It's best to send these people information in advance and let them know you're going to ask about it on the call. But again, not against the team. Definitely want to be part of a team and want to be there to help and serve. They just go about it in a very different way. So with an analytical supporter, you want to have facts, data, give them time, and let them do their work at the pace in which they want. An analytical supporter is very detailed and perfectionist driven. So making sure they have clear time. And you can imagine if you've got a driver working with an analytical supporter, if they don't have all the data they need to help support that teammate, there's going to be a struggle. And now let's talk about the drivers. And you have 2 types of drivers. You've got social drivers and we have analytical drivers. And again, it's that social aspect is changing it. Whether a person is really loves to be around people all the time, get their energy from that, like to communicate openly with people before going, or rather than being with facts and figures on their own first to process. So a social driver, very, very competitive. Like I said, most likely to think me first and to talk a lot more than they listen. They just love to hear themselves talk. Again, I'm talking extreme here. You've got people on your teams that won't be in these extremes, but if they're wired that way, that's going to be their natural trait and tendency, I like to say. Very take charge, very fast paced, very fast paced. Can be a little bit more methodical based on, again, the way the profile is, and they can be structured or independent. So the key thing here, though, is that they're highly assertive and they like the social aspect. They're an expressive social communicator. And then on the flip side of the driver, you've got the analytical driver, who is not as expressive and social, more fact-based, but still highly, highly, highly assertive. One of the team, as I was talking about, one of the ones who had the most difficulty on our team and that people were asking me to fix was an analytical driver. She was our top salesperson. She could close business like nobody's business, but she had no warmth, no personal warmth. She went through support staff like wildfire, and we really had to address her approach with the team and even with our clients. One of my husband wondered at one point, he goes, I wonder if people just buy because she doesn't give up. She was so driven and going after the sale and asking. So it could be a challenge if she wasn't aware of her impact on others. So we did a lot of work on the team, but what happened is people started to really appreciate her analytical capability. So when we had something big we wanted to do, like a business case for new product or a marketing idea, we always used her data, her facts. She helped build the case because she had such attention to detail, such drive, and such analytical problem-solving capabilities. So the team really got a chance to understand where she could thrive while we softened out her edges. So some steps to getting your team to develop. The first one is definitely aligning everyone to the mission. Like I said, you can't have a team for team's sake. You got to have a goal. You got to have an outcome that everybody's going to, and everybody has to be a part of it. Back to that silo question. If the support team isn't part of the goal of sales or acquiring new clients or retaining clients, and don't see how they tie into that, and we're not communicating and celebrating that all the time, you are going to have silos. So the sales people need to know what the measures are for customer success, and the customer success team needs to understand what the measures are for sales. And ideally, everyone understands how you support each other getting there. And those are communicated all of the time. And then building trust. Trust is defined as meeting expectations over time. So the longer time we have together and the more I've had expectations and they've been met by any of my team members or my leader, the more I'm going to trust. So again, remember, in forming and storming, that trust factor is so low because people haven't had the opportunity to work together and to see that someone's going to be there if they fall, or be there if they need something, and they're going to deliver what they promise. So that's a key one that just takes time. But I love that concept of just thinking about it. Is everybody meeting the expectations of each other? And are we being clear and realistic about them? Communication, you can't say enough. I mean, as a leader, you've got to communicate this in all ways, in every way. Keep restating your mission, keep restating your priorities, your objectives, and your progress against them. And communicate transparently. If there are things in the way, things you're dealing with, or things that are causing problems, make sure you have that. So facilitating that and facilitating collaboration where the team works on solving those problems together. And then empower and delegate. You've got great people. You've got a diverse team now put in place. Now let them at it. Give people responsibility to take the lead on key initiatives. Or if you've got somebody who does something really, really well, have that person lead the call, develop the team. Be flexible. Man, if we had to flex in these last 2 years like no other time in our careers. And we're always going to have to be flexible with the needs of our team, the way that they want to be treated, the way they want to interact with each other. And then you got to hold accountable. You have to hold them accountable to the mission, achieving objectives, and staying with the team's values. If you haven't done some values conversations with your team, and this is something we're actually going to renew here at Omnia, just with the changing dynamics of our own team. It's time to revisit, what do we value and what do we expect of our people? So we're clear right out at the start. And you as the leader then have to hold people accountable for the entire practice. And it's a lot harder than it, just saying it, for sure. And then again, develop self-awareness of your own traits, your team's traits, and make sure the team knows each other's traits. So as a leader, I keep this checklist handy myself because I think it's just such a good checklist of, like, when things are going wrong, have I done these things? So have I clearly defined expectations? And behind expectations, there should be the what you expect people to do, but the why behind it. Why are we doing this? What's the business case? Again, your analyticals are going to really want to know that why in the data. And anybody does. They want to know what's driving this and what we're doing. Then asking yourself, have I provided sufficient training? Does everybody know how to do what I need them to do? And do I know how to do what I need them to do? And then making sure you're holding everybody to the same bar. Your teams can be a little like your kids. We say we don't have favorites, but usually you do have some favorites. So be careful that you're not letting some people get away with things that you wouldn't let others, and that you are holding everybody else to the same expectations. Inspecting what you expect, make sure that you're looking at data, make sure you're looking at activity. And if you ask someone to do it, that old trust but verify is always a good concept to think about. You trust them, but verify occasionally it's getting done, and it's getting done in the way the team members want it to have. And then adapting to changing circumstances. We all know this is key. A lot of you did ask about, how do we engage a team that's across country, across world, across just even some in the office, some at work. It's a whole new world where you've got to adapt to those circumstances. You've got to use collaboration tools. You've got to use discussion boards, chats, rethink your traditions, and how did you do them when everybody was together that you could still do when they're apart. So really adapting to all of the changing circumstances that are going to continue to evolve as we go through this. And then the clincher, have you asked for feedback? Have you asked the team how you're doing? Have you sat down with them and done a process check on what their wishes are for the company, their role, their job, their clients? Where do they think we can improve? And what can you be doing as a leader to be there for them and be more effective for the team? It's hard to do, but it's a really important step. So we're coming to a wrap. I did replant the plant with my mother's help. So as of a week ago, this is the new plant. So wish me well. I did just water it before this webinar. I forgot to water it on Monday, so I'm not doing so well so far, but she just got some water now. I will take any questions if you have them, and I don't think I saw any in the chat, but let me just scroll through and make sure if you have any questions, and then I've got a few resources to share with you. Yes, thank you, Stacy. I need to add it to my calendar and get a reminder with an alarm. And yes, you will get a copy of the recording for sure. And we have an offer for you. So I'm going to go scoot over to that. We are offering everybody on the call today a free professional development report, so you can get to know your unique traits. And then highly recommend you do it for your team. We have these reports for everybody on your team. Obviously, it is a small fee. And if you want to take it a step further, I know some of you were asking about mediation and conflict. Again, we have the conflict webinar. We also have a customized team dynamics report can be written for the leader or can be shared with the entire team. And it's written by our professional analysts that would look at the dynamics of the team and raise where there may be conflict or issues and some suggestions on how to address them based on personality traits. So we're here to take that a step further. And then one of you asked, how can my team learn more about how to use the Omnia? It was a client who wanted to know. So I wanted to make sure you know that on the first Friday of every month, we now offer what's called First Friday Fundamentals. Our next one is May 4th. And the link to that First Friday Fundamental is coming up as well. And then one last announcement. We have a lot today. Omnia is releasing our first ever primary research report, and it's getting launched today. We surveyed our client base as well as looked at industry research and trends on talent issues. and what's impacting our clients the most and what they're doing about it. And that report is being released today. So be on the lookout. There'll be an email. There'll be social media. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can get a copy of that report and put it to use. So thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you again next quarter on another Takeaway Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.